It's relatively warm here in London, relative for for late December. I'm sure it's nothing compared to the San Diego area where my co-host James Valiant is. But of course, when everybody anybody in Europe thinks of a nice, luxurious holiday on islands, beautiful islands with beautiful beaches, they think of the Maldives. Yeah, people love going to the Maldives. Don't really, think too deeply about where it is they're going because the images you see from there are absolutely stunning. So who cares? It's pretty much a second favorite faraway holiday destination of people in Britain after Dubai. Um, but yeah, the Maldives about 6 months ago decided to ban Israeli passport holders because Israel is mean to the Palestinians or something. Now, immediately there were some questions there. Wait a minute, why are we banning them? 2 million of them are Arabs, or as they were described in the Maldives, um, Palestinians. Uh, since then, they've kind of changed their mind. This is supposedly, a big deal. It's not for me. I really hope that Israelis don't fall for this and think, oh, okay, let's go to the Maldives. They're now okay with us. Yeah, by the way, there's a lot more to say about the Maldives, and we'll say some of it on this show. But yeah, welcome to the Daily Objective, the last Daily Objective of 2024. I'm joined by James Valiant. James, does this change your travel plans to the Maldives? Were you planning a holiday there?
I no, I hadn't even, but you're right. It's the pictures look gorgeous. I had not been planning on any such trip. I mean, it is a chain of small islands well into the Indian Ocean, south of Asia. I think it's the smallest or the second smallest Asian nation when you count it by land or population. But 28% of their GDP comes from tourism. So that is a huge percentage of your economy directly from tourism. This doesn't strike me as terribly smart. I think it's something like 90% of their government's revenue comes from either import duties or tourism related taxes. Um, Now, what Brits have gone, I mean, they were a part of their protectorate of the British Empire. They gained their independence only in the mid 1960s. But they're still part of the Commonwealth. Absolutely still part of the Commonwealth. Which, there's some dubious nations that are still part of the Commonwealth, and this surely is one of them. They have a crescent on their flag since they were conquered by the Muslims centuries ago. They've been ruled by a sultan and so forth. They have a more democratic system today, but they are a fanatically Muslim country, and that's what the population is really most known for, is their fanatical Muslim attitudes. And so I wouldn't vacation there, and I wouldn't advise my Israeli or Jewish friends to vacation there. They're obviously racist in their hostility. It's obviously the most savage form of mysticism-based collectivist racism that we talk about a lot here. But the disgusting part is how that has come out of the closet, and nations can. I know they haven't actually executed this policy yet, but whole nations can come out of the closet and be overtly anti-Semitic. I mean, rank anti-Semitism, and that's not what's shameful. They are proud and boastful. They're engaged in sort of uh, what do they call it? Moral signaling. What's the term for that? Virtue signaling.
Virtue,
Yes,
yeah.
it's clearly a case of virtue. So now consider this being virtue to signal. It's racism that they're signaling, not.
Yeah.
But all I
And
think it can do is alienate American and Israeli tourists, and their economy is heavily dependent on tourism. Why would you do that?
yeah, every September, world leaders gather in the UN in New York to talk about whatever. And of course, this year, as is often the case, they talked about Israel, and this included the president of the Maldives, a country that is ruled by Sharia law. By the way, thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says Happy New Year, Happy New Year to you as well, and thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says Maldives is a Muslim nation. They are all the same Israel haters. Yeah, Muslim nations generally tend to be anti-Israel. And again, the Maldives is not a place you should consider, like other Muslim countries, not a place you should consider to vacation in, despite how beautiful some of the beaches may be. Now it's not just if you're Israeli. Certainly, if you're gay, you should consider not visiting. It is a criminal offense. Now, it's apparently something that's kind of tolerated in resorts that are aimed at Westerners, but it is a criminal offense. It is punishable by imprisonment and lashings. So yeah, this is the country that is a virtue signaling to the world, as you say, and it should raise a question not just about traveling to the Maldives, but about what uh, by what standard is something considered a virtue in the world today.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. This is proud. This is boastful. Now, practical considerations are the things I think that are delaying them here. I mean, why would you? I mean, this has got to turn off American tourists. Why would you turn off the biggest set of wealthy tourists in the world, Americans? And this will have the definite effect, if it does go into practice, of alienating American tourists. So it seems exceedingly foolish, but you see, morality is a more powerful force than practicality. When people really perceive something as the right thing to do, boy, will they pay a price for it if it's the moral and correct view. So this is a twisted view of philosophy, ladies and gentlemen, will give you a twisted sort of policy, and you'll end up cutting off your own nose to spite your face. Shooting yourself in one foot and then shooting yourself in the other foot just to, for good measure, because, you're morally committed to something. And that's the effect of morality. You act in very, very impractical ways if your morality is not based in reason and reality, like objectivism is. I mean, obviously, life is not their standard of value, and they're not approaching it in a rational way. So they're not going to be close to anything we would resemble as decent. But it is virtue for them to signal. Exactly correct. But it tells you something about international organizations too. I mean, think of it. There they are, a proud member of the United Nations, no doubt. Oh, a member, as I just said, of the Commonwealth of Nations. King Charles is still the head of the Commonwealth of Nations. In any case, what the hell is America doing in any of these international organizations that would have a country like the Maldives in it? I mean, come on. I mean, we should have nothing to do with a place that lashes homosexuals. Full stop right there. I guess they're a step up, a half notch up from Gaza or Iran, where they will hang you the slow way from cranes or by a chain sometimes. So I guess they're not strict adherents to the details of the Hadith, which make it really clear that you should be executing gays, but they still imprison them, fine them, or lash them. Huh? Okay. Well, just on that basis, this place is obviously a sick, twisted place with a very perverse sense of morality. So whatever virtue they're signaling is going to be pure vice, and we can see it right here. That's what they're doing. It's rank racism. I mean, obviously, Israelis have many opinions on this topic. Israel being a modern, comparatively liberal place like the United States, we have difference of opinion. We allow people to express their different opinions, but not for the Maldives. If you're Israeli, I'm sorry, you're just out. Whatever your personal opinion might be, and it's obviously anti-Semitism that is at the root of all of this. There's just the most crudest kind of perceptual level collectivism, which is seriously considered by high-ranking government officials in the Maldives. This is the 21st century, ladies and gentlemen. There are places in this world that have a long way to go before they really catch up to a civilized frame of mind, even.
Yeah. Thank you, Roland, for the super chat. Roland says, "Happy 2025, happy 2025 to you as well." One of your first lunches in 2025 is with me, so that's a happy start to 2025. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, "For nice beaches, we go to California or Hawaii. LOL." Yeah, James doesn't have to travel far. But there's also a beach in Vegas, by the way. Did you know that?
A beach?
In Mandalay Bay. I mean, it's a pool
Oh,
with
well.
sand, but
Yes.
it's called a
Well,
beach.
there's an Eiffel Tower and a Statue of Liberty in Vegas too.
That's true. And the David, a real
And the
life person.
David, yes.
By the way, I love Vegas. So yeah, I'm
Yes.
saying this with love. Thank you,
They'll
P
reproduce anything there. Yes.
Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, and yet, James, LGBTs for Gaza love to hate Israel. Yeah, I mean, again, if they express that love, elsewhere. By the way, not even elsewhere. We've seen scenes in London in these Saturday pro-Hamas protests where gay people are, get attacked by Muslims. So yeah, one can only imagine and doesn't have to imagine what would happen if they went. But yeah, James, as you mentioned before the show, um, the Maldives is better for gay people than
Yes.
most Muslim countries. It's only like up to a year imprisonment and only up to 100 lashes. So,
Oh my God, lashes. Well, to be fair, Christians and Jews should recognize that in their Bible, the law of Moses does prescribe the death penalty for homosexuality and for adultery. Sex crimes do get stoning to death under the law of Moses in the Torah. But fortunately, Christians and Jews ignore that part of their sacred text these days, at least in terms of their official law. And so, in places like the United States and Israel, you don't find. You see, that's the difference with Sharia enforcing countries. To the extent they do allow their religious text, their sacred texts to govern them, is precisely the extent to which they are not civilized and they're living in a dark and twisted past. Now, wrap your head around the LGBT community when it comes to Gaza or Iran, issues like this. It's absolutely suicidal. Again, we see the power of philosophy. The Maldives, similarly, may be heavily dependent on tourism, but no, morality first, baby. And the same is true, interestingly enough, with the LGBT community. In other words, the right of these people, this ethnic group, to have self-determination and to enforce their own traditions and to fight Western colonialism, trumps any consistency in their own mind about their need for a respect for individual rights and how recent that is. I mean, in British law, for example, people were going to jail for being homosexual even into the 20th century. So civilization is, in that regard, is a somewhat fragile thing here, my gay friends, and you should be aware of the inconsistency in your own head, but try and wrap your head around the overt support for a culture or a nation that would execute you or even subject you to lashes or a fine, even just a fine. Just think about that. Just a fine for being gay. Outrageous, uncivilized, barbaric.
yes, of course, the only reason Muslim countries have laws against homosexuality is because of Western oppression or something to that effect. I mean, we have heard that uh, the Palestinians are anti-gay because the occupation hasn't allowed them to evolve or something. Whenever these people defend the Palestinians, they really do it in a pretty offensive way. Anyway, thank you, Roland, for another super chat. Roland says, even Julius Caesar has a palace in Vegas. That's true. That is where the David is.
True.
And so I read this story that we're discussing today in the Israeli website of the newspaper Maariv. I think it's still a newspaper, but I haven't been to Israel in a while. I think it may be online only. But one of the things mentioned there was after the original announcement, there were some criticism, and a U.S. congressperson, it doesn't say who, also tried to push for cutting U.S. aid to the Maldives. And for me, the only question there, first of all, is who is this congressman and why aren't you naming him? And also, why is America, what is going on with you people?
If Doge wants to start cutting, it would seem to me that aid to places like the Maldives is a no-brainer. I've got a long list of no-brainers for Doge, but surely among and that's obviously not going to be a bank breaker, whatever aid the U.S. gives to Maldives. But why the hell are we giving aid to a country that backward and savage that would even think about that? But you see, that's exactly the kind of pressure that they would have to, maybe because of their religious and moral commitments, that the kind of pressure they would have to be under is, okay, no more American tourists will be coming here. Do you want to take that risk? And it does seem exceedingly foolish to alienate American tourists if 28% of your GDP is tourism.
Yeah, yeah, that's another thing that was mentioned that there was concern among some in the hospitality industry in the Maldives that Jews who are not from Israel will wonder whether they should go to the Maldives
Hmm.
as well. But yeah, again, I would love to know, and I haven't looked into this because who cares? But if anybody does know what the reason is for the U.S. Giving aid to the Maldives, let us know in the comment below. Whatever the reason is, as in, what officially the government says the reason is. I'd be interested just out of curiosity to know
Sheer
why
curiosity.
that is. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. I think I know why people support ARCUK. I think there's good reason to do that, and certainly a great way to end the year is to support our work. Thank you, Robert Naser, for being a member for 32 months. Robert says, as an American, I apologize to the rest of the world for our political leadership. It's not my place to apologize, but God knows they're not going to. No, they're not just not apologizing. They're also taking credit for things as we discussed. And I think in the last episode of the year, it's a good time to bring up what we discussed just a couple of weeks ago when Biden had that press conference about the fall of Assad and took credit for it because he said we gave an unwavering or something like that support
Yes.
to Israel in its war against Hezbollah, which undoubtedly is a big part of why Assad fell when he did. But no, you didn't. The whole time, every single day, you issued statements saying we are against escalation or we want de-escalation, and it was escalation that brought Hezbollah and therefore Assad down. So yeah, leaders will tell you stories that are not based on a true story. Uh,
Politicians, I hope I don't need to tell our audience this, but you should take with a grain of salt utterances by politicians. Uh, think about it. He says, don't go into Rafah. He says, don't go into Lebanon. He says, don't. Take the win when Iran hits them. Now, had it not been for the attack, the counterstrikes in Iran, had it not been for going into Lebanon and taking out Hezbollah, the Assad regime would still be in power. If Israel had taken any of your advice, President Biden, it would not have happened. I mean, talk about, just the unlimited gall of letting such words escape his mouth as he's insulting Netanyahu. His Vice President Harris isn't even showing up to his speech before a joint session of Congress. And then they have the nerve to say that the Biden administration played any role in the fall of Assad. That is mind blowing. But that's the kind of outrageous, obvious lie that only a politician can utter. I mean, good Lord, you either have to have a PhD in philosophy or you have to be a high ranking political, highly elected official in a Western country to let that kind of BS escape your mouth. I mean, good Lord.
Yeah, and Tom says in the chat, the reason altruism, I'm guessing you mean the reason for U.S. aid to the Maldives. Yes, but what specifically would they say? And I don't want anybody to waste time researching this because I certainly wouldn't. I'm curious, but not curious enough to Google it. So, but yeah, what explanation could? Because I'm sure there's an explanation for any money that the government spends. They have to have that explanation, right? And yeah, if Doge does what it says on the tin. I'd love to see them either cut it or, tell us here's why your hard-earned taxpayer money is going towards aid to a country governed by Sharia law that doesn't allow Israelis, but now kind of allows Israelis, but not Israeli leaders, by the way. That was
Oh,
how they
well, no,
reversed
no,
the
no, no.
decision. it's only the leaders that we're not allowing, which of course, is yeah, great to go out on a limb nowadays in the international community and say that you reject Israeli leadership.
Sheer insanity. You'd think that we were living in some kind of version of Alice in Wonderland. Really, it is that detached from reality. But that is the world in which we live. What a year it has been, my brother, though. It is true that we've seen some ugly, ugly racism from many nations in this world against Israel. And I think that's one of the big headlines of this last year is even seeing the growth of anti-Semitism in my own country, which I thought had been one of the friendlier places to Jews in this world. But I see the rise of ugly anti-Semitism, especially on university campuses. And that's one of the disturbing features of this year. But is look at things like the fall of Assad. Look at now the weakness of Iran. Look at the way Hezbollah and Hamas have been so denuded. I mean, that's some good stuff. The enemies of Israel, the enemies of civilization in that area have been pushed back. And I think that's why we're hearing these moralistic virtue signaling yelps from bigoted countries like that. Israel has succeeded to a large extent in pushing back its enemies in the wake of October 7th. And that's a good part of what's happened over this last year. But I'll tell you, this rise of ugly anti Semitism across the globe, even in my country, is quite disturbing.
Yeah. Thank you, Ginger, for the super chat. Ginger says, I'm convinced Biden's constant evasions and lies have contributed to his mental disintegration. He long ago left reality. Yeah, that's true. If you look at the history of Biden, it wasn't that he was all there before he started walking into the woods. So, yeah.
Yes, well, the old United States Congress, the 118th, is just dissolved. The president, I think, dissolved sometime earlier.
Yeah. And yeah, and of course I still hold him personally accountable and yeah, I much as I am not a fan of the person replacing him, I can't wait to see Biden go. Akira responds to Chandler, and I didn't see the rest of the chat, but I like this comment, so I'm going to read it. He says Joe Rogan's debate with Crowder made me think Crowder wasn't as dumb as I thought because Rogan was just so moronic that he kind of surprised me. Yeah, I generally agree with all that. I don't know if they're either of them is really stupid, but Joe Rogan, just whenever I watch him, it seems that there's nothing the other person can say that he wouldn't agree with or at least be fascinated by, as if this is some revelation and nothing to, at the very least, question. But yeah,
I just heard him the other day commenting that quantum entanglement looks like the Buddhist symbol, and so that must mean that the ancient Buddhists were in touch with some higher plane of knowledge. So no, I wouldn't rely on Joe Rogan
I
for
mean, to be fair,
serious.
Joe Rogan is usually on some higher plane of knowledge.
Higher plane than most of us most of the time. Yes.
Speaking of which, last year you and I did the daily objective, the last daily objective of the year, and at the end, I threw out this comment about, Happy New Year, and everybody, we're gonna celebrate, and I kind of half jokingly said something like, "We're not gonna drink because Allah forbids it," or something, which is along the lines of my sense of humor. Maybe it wasn't well delivered, but somebody in the comments later said, Razi, why do you have to be so disrespectful and make a comment like that? And um, yeah, I first of all, I prefer irreverent to disrespectful, and I think somebody on the channel must have said something similar because I vaguely remember it. But you're irreverent when people don't deserve reverence, which I think
Yeah.
religion doesn't.
And people
Allah,
still
well, he
believing
doesn't
their
deserve.
ancient texts. Like what I was just discussing. Christians and Jews went through an enlightenment in the 18th century. They went through a modernization in the 19th century, so that they've come out not having the death penalty for sex offenses like being gay or adultery or something. That shows the measure of our improvement. Now, anyone who's not up to speed in that regard culturally deserves ridicule and irreverence as much as we can dish out. These people are backward savages, full stop. Now, if I will not look, all other things being equal, I will not go out of my way to offend some religious or ethnic group. No, of course not. But when it is savagery of that kind, it deserves worse than irreverence. It deserves ridicule and sarcasm at the very, very least. Please.
Yeah, people, please don't confuse the fact that we are, a for-profit with the profit. We are not for. Okay, yeah, we're a for-profit company, which means we, are legally able to say things that we wouldn't be legally able to say if we were a nonprofit, and also means that we can make money. Which of course we would love to make. And if people would like to help us make money, you can become a member. You get access as a for-profit. We try to give something for that money, and you get access to a bunch of different perks, hours of additional content, in-depth content, including our study group run by James Valiant on Leonard Peikoff's courses. At the moment, it's Introduction to Logic, our weekly book club, where at the moment we are discussing Atlas Shrugged, our WhatsApp groups where the discussion continues 24/7, often literally 24/7, where many people on this channel participate in those discussions. Daniel has adopted the habit of sometimes posting things that are going to be on shows in advance on those groups, which I really like because um, yeah. And yeah, so you get access to all that and you get to support our work. So consider
And the
giving
work we
yourself
do
a
here, I
few
mean, over the
euros.
last year, Rozzy, you have done an amazingly wonderful thing. You have given the most morally consistent, hard hitting, daily almost coverage of what's been going on with Israel and the Middle East. And I, if you guys appreciate that, because this is a voice you're going to hear in very few other places. There are only a handful of other people who even share the kind of views that we express here. And if you think that's a value, as I do, priceless value, then put a price on it and pay for that value. We also believe in the trader principle. It is a virtue to make money and to be a for-profit organization. But if you find value in this, I'm also a trader. I'd, I'd, I'd pay if I found this to be a value, ladies and gentlemen. So please do consider becoming a member. We cover all kinds of stuff. On Thursdays, we cover we're analyzing the U.S. Constitution, for example. But again, that's a very high level of membership that's required. But whatever level you can become a member, please consider becoming a paid subscriber to Ayn Rand Center UK. Rozzy and the whole group here, I think, are doing wonderful work.
I agree. And yeah, I was thinking, how do we end this episode? And there's a couple of options. One is I really I didn't watch yesterday's episode of the Daily Objective because I was on a plane, but I have a lot to say about the vile anti-Semite that Jimmy Carter was. Uh, but I'm going to instead try to end it on a more positive note. And I think this is something I need to preemptively apologize for because I am not a poetry reader, but Quent Cordair, who is a friend of the channel, this is a poem by him that has been shared and is usually shared around this time of year, and I will read it to the best of my ability. Our glasses filled with cheer, we do raise this solemn toast. Here's to all that we hold dear and to those we treasure most. May you take all you can find. May you keep all you can make. May your heart follow your mind. May you live for living's sake. May you reap all that you're worth. May your friends stay close and well. May your heaven be on earth and your enemies in hell. Thank you, Quent Cordair, for those wonderful words, which I hope I did some justice in at least reading, if not in how I read them. And yeah, the Daily Objective has had its best year viewership wise by far. And let's hope that next year we can compete with the Crowders and the Rogans. I think they can't compete with us quality wise. We can't compete with them numbers wise, but I think the changing the latter is more likely than changing the former. So
I do. Well, you read it beautifully, and what an amazing poem. The Cordairs have been great supporters of our work here, and I want to thank them and Jim Brown and everyone else who's sponsored and helped us in our work here. It's been an amazing year, so thank you, and thank all the people who send in super chats, questions, and all the members. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and Happy New Year.
absolutely. And the show is over, but the year is not over at ARCUK yet. We do have our year in review episode following this show on the reality show, the year that Israel finally started fighting back. Um, Thank you, Robert, for the super chat. Robert says you're welcome. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I second James's words. Thank you all for your support. Thank you, James, for your support and what you've done and everything you've done for this channel for ARC UK. Yeah, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.